What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over how you can improve fast in Fortnite Chapter 4. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can tell you that's just going to immediately make you insane at the game, but if you follow the steps I talk about in this video, you definitely will see improvement in your gameplay over time. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below what you feel like your biggest weakness is as a Fortnite player right now. So, the biggest thing that you can do to improve in this game is just play the game. And I know that sounds simple, but so much of this game just comes down to mechanical skill. So like aiming, and if you're playing build mode, building and editing, and even just weapon swapping and getting that timing down can be complicated for some people. And then also another very important skill in this game, I feel like, is just immediately knowing what to do given the situation and how to play any given fight. But all of those things that I just described, I feel like just come down to play time. The more time you put in, the more comfortable you're going to be playing the game, the more comfortable you're going to be with all the mechanics of the game, and the more comfortable you're going to be in different situations, and you're going to know how to tackle them and handle them without really panicking or hesitating in any way. So just putting time into the game will help you get better at those things. But one thing you can do to get a huge kind of increase to your efficiency when it comes to improvement is playing creative. I talked about this in a previous video, and I'll have it linked down in the description below, where I talked about creative maps that I think are good for practicing, and I covered, aim maps, building and editing maps, and then different fighting maps, from some for zero build, some for normals, and just a bunch of different types of maps that you can use to improve. And the reason why creative is so good is because you can get in so much repetition and practice in a much smaller time span. If you're playing a game of Battle Royale, you have to load into the game, you have to find the match, load into the game, wait on spawn island, get into the game, land, loot up, maybe you fight right away, maybe you don't, but you might spend 5 to 10 minutes before you get a single engagement. Where if you play creative, you can just rinse and repeat engagements very fast, or in the case of building and editing, you can build and edit much faster without having to worry about farming materials or fighting other players or anything like that. So creative just makes it a much more efficient way to practice, because you're cutting down on all that like downtime in between games or loading in and out of matches and things of that nature. So a lot of improving just comes down to the time you put in, but if you put time into creative, it's almost like 5 times more efficient than just playing the game normally, because you don't have as much downtime and you don't have as much waiting. The next thing I want to talk about before we get into more tips is that last month, over 1,100 people used creator code EvolveJake in the item shop, which is my code. It's underneath the webcam at all times if you guys want to use that in the item shop. But this, I think last month was the first time I ever had over 1,000 unique supporters use my code in a given month. So I'm going to be doing V-Buck giveaways every day on Twitch. I got a lot of V-Buck cards to give away. I would do them here on YouTube, but YouTube doesn't have a messaging system, so there's no way for me to get in contact with you. But I stream every day on Twitch. It'll be linked down in the description below. Maybe some on Twitter as well, but I plan on doing daily V-Buck giveaways because of so many of you supported and used my creator code in the item shop. So that is much appreciated. The next thing we're going to talk about that will help your improvement massively is going to be try new items that are in the game. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people hesitate to do, or whenever there is a meta shift, they're kind of hesitant to adapt. So I feel like if you're mainly a zero build player, which I know many of my viewers are, for a lot of last chapter, the high fire rate shotguns were the meta. So like the auto shotgun, the drum shotty when that was in the game, and maybe even the Evo Chrome shotgun in the last season. But this season, I feel like the Thunder shotgun is significantly better than the Maven. And people who, kind of refuse to adjust to the meta and try to use the Maven constantly rather than using the pump. And the Maven is okay, but I just don't think it's as good as the pump. Adapting to different weapon types not only gets you better with those weapons, but I feel like it helps you get much better in the long run, because you never know what the meta is going to be in a given Fortnite season. Fortnite has been around for 5 years. I think the only items that have been constant in the game are bandages, medkits, and big pots. Everything else has been vaulted at different times or has came back at different times. You never know what's going to be in the game season to season, or even update to update. So being good with a variety of different items is really important. You saw this last season as well with the removal of the Striker Burst Rifle. A lot of players started using the Hammer AR, but not a lot of people had been used to using those third-person ARs, so it took a while for people to get used to it. And then even this season with the Hammer, I've had people comment about how they were kind of slow to adapt to using shockwaves, like they didn't want to use mobility at all, and then eventually they kind of gave in and started using it, and then now we got this hammer item for them to adjust to. And I personally think when a new item comes out, some of them are just kind of meme troll items, but some items are good. And when a good item comes out, instead of just avoiding using it, you want to familiarize yourself and get good with it, get used to it, because you never know when it's going to come back. People who used shockwaves last chapter and got good with them, once you build that skill, it might take you a little bit to get used to it again when it comes back, but there probably will be a time in the future where shockwaves are the meta again, or when a high fire rate shotgun is the meta again, or a third-person assault rifle is a meta again. So being good with all of these different weapon types, I think, is pretty important. And then kind of a similar point, I think, is that you should be open to trying new settings. This is something that I've seen a lot of people struggle with in the past, you know, especially in Fortnite, because the settings we have in the game now weren't always there. Like custom keybinds weren't a thing for a while. The way the sensitivity options are wasn't a thing for a while. And in Chapter 2, Season 2, when they added the new sensitivity settings, the advanced settings we have in the game now, the people who took advantage of it early on and fine-tuned their sensitivity and took advantage of things like linear or expo had a significant advantage, especially linear that season, because it was really overpowered. And people who just refused to adapt to settings got left in the dust. And this even goes all the way back to the super old Fortnite settings. A lot of you who started playing more recently would have never used these. But when the game first dropped, there was no swapping weapons in 2 directions on controller. You had to swap all the way through your weapon inventory to get back to the thing you were on. So if you had your shotgun in slot 1, and then you swapped to your SMG in slot 2, you would have to hit your weapon swap button like 3 or 4 more times to get back to your shotgun. And then eventually they added the Combat Pro button layout, which allowed you to swap in multiple directions. But there was months where people who started playing the game early on refused to change their settings because they didn't want to adapt to the new settings because they feel like they might get worse in the short term. And I feel like that's typically how it goes with settings. Like, you don't always need to change your settings all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But if you feel like there is some inefficiency with your settings, like if you feel like your sensitivity is just way too slow to always react, or maybe you feel like it's always way too high and you don't have control over things, if you struggle with certain aspects of your keybinds, changing your settings to more optimal settings can be a hindrance in the short term while you get used to it again, but it's like taking a step backward to take several steps forward. Once you get used to it and you have the more like optimal sensitivity or optimal keybinds, or you know, whatever setting it is, you will get much better in the long run, I think, personally. So don't be scared to adjust the settings. I've seen so many players struggle with this over the years. I knew people who played on like 3 sensitivity and the old school button layout for years into the game because they were scared to be bad for 2 weeks, but because of that, they were never actually that good. So definitely want to be open to trying new items and open to trying new settings. Fortnite is a game which forces you to always adapt with different items coming in and different metas coming in. And the next thing I want to talk about is kind of to piggyback on that. You know, sometimes you have to take a few steps backwards to take steps forward. You know, if you want to get in more fights, which I think is super important for getting better, you're going to have to die off spawn sometimes landing at a hot location. You know, if you want to get more optimal settings, it might take you some time to adjust to it. So be okay with it taking time to improve. I know this video was about getting better faster, but Fortnite is a game with a lot of randomness. Some days just aren't going to be your day. And if you're stressing about like not improving very fast, I feel like it's just going to make you better or worse in the long run, you know, that stress. So just be okay with losing, be okay with, you know, having bad days or bad games. It happens to everyone. Like I said, there's a lot of randomness in this game. And the most important point, I think, aside from just playing the game and playing creative, is going to be fight players in game. And this is counterintuitive to a lot of people because when they pick up a BR, they want to win. You know, everybody wants to win. I feel like everybody starts out playing very passive. But if you get attached to that playstyle too much and you are very attached to it, like I've talked about this before and people just don't understand it, I feel like, where I'm saying like don't hide in bushes all the time. I mean, when your entire play style is just existing in bushes, you know, obviously there's going to be times where maybe you go into there to heal, or that's the only cover that exists in zone and you just got to do what you got to do. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people whose entire play style is just hiding in bushes and avoiding conflict. If you play like that, not only are you getting much less practice out of a given game, kind of like I talked about before at the start of the video, but you aren't actually getting better. You might get some wins this way, and you probably will just luck into some wins where maybe you're hiding all game and then the final 2 people fight and then you third party it and you win. Cool. But you're not getting better at that. And I feel like one thing a lot of people struggle with not only is just fighting in general, but being nervous fighting. And I feel like that you just kind of get over that by playing the game more and being used to fighting. You know, if you get into a bunch of fights, you will be less nervous fighting and you'll be better at fighting. You'll be more confident. But if you just never fight people, you're never going to get over that nervousness. And I talked before about how a lot of players want to win in BRs, and they're probably just going to be nervous in game, right? So if you're super nervous in every fight you get into, and then you're also super nervous because it's end game, you're very not likely to win that scenario. You know what I'm saying? So get in fights, force fights with people. You know, you could still play smart. I'm not saying that you need to just push everybody and run down the middle of the field like a maniac, but like try to be a little bit more mindful and like of, you know, the amount of engagements you're getting into, and try to force a few fights, because that will make you much better in the long run. And this game does have skill-based matchmaking, so if you get a bunch of wins just hiding, you're probably going to get put in harder matches versus people who actually know how to fight, and it's not going to work in the long run. And that kind of goes into what I was talking about before, about like kind of being okay losing sometimes, or having, you know, off days where you don't get as many wins, and then also being comfortable taking a few steps backwards to take steps forwards in the long run. I think it is super important to improving at anything, honestly, but especially this game. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is maybe a little self-serving, and that is going to be to watch content and to watch streams from other players. At the start of the video, I talked about how like the more you play, the more familiar you'll be with different situations, and you'll know how to play them better just automatically. But you can also learn a lot from watching people's streams or watching people's YouTube videos, because, you know, odds are streamers and YouTubers had a lot of experience playing in the game because they play a lot. So you can kind of get that knowledge transferred to you faster without having to spend as much time in game. I stream every day on Twitch. I upload videos pretty much every day on this channel. If you guys want to see more from me, subscribe, give the video a like I said earlier. Comment down below what you struggle with most in Fortnite, and like I said before, or what you feel like your biggest weakness is. If I see, you know, a lot of people kind of commenting similar things, maybe I'll make a video on it. And like I said earlier in the video, I am going to be doing V-Buck giveaways on Twitch. It is linked down in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.